place on the east coast which the reader is asked to consider is Seaborough. Marshes intersected by dikes to the south, recalling the early chapters of Great Expectations, flat fields to the north, heath, fir woods, and above all gorse inland. A long seafront and a street. Behind that a spacious church of flint, with a broad solid western tower and a peal of 6 bells. They rang with a flat, clacking sort of sound on those hot days, but when the air was softer, they were mellower too. I began to know Seaborough as a child, but still it keeps its place in my affections, and any tales of it that I pick up have an interest for me. One such tale came to me quite accidentally by a man whom I have been able to oblige, enough in his opinion to justify his making me his confidant to this extent.
"I know all that country, more or less," he said. "I used to go to Seaborough pretty regularly for golf in the spring. I generally put up at the Bear with a friend. Henry Long, it was. It was April, and by some chance we were almost the only people in the hotel. So we were the more surprised when, after dinner, our sitting-room door opened and a young man put his head in. He was rather a rabbity, anemic subject, light hair and light eyes, but not unpleasing. Long was playing patience, I was writing, and it became plain to me after a few minutes that this visitor of ours was in rather a state of fidgets or nerves, and so I turned to at engaging him in talk. After some remarks, he became rather confidential. You'll think it very odd of me, but the fact is I've had something of a shock. It began more than a week ago, when I bicycled over to Froston to see the church. It's got one of those pretty porches with niches and shields. I took a photograph of it, and then an old man who was tidying up in the churchyard came up. "Ah, yes, that is a nice porch. And you know, sir, what's the meaning of that coat of arms there?" Though I'm not much of a herald, I was able to say yes. I thought it was the old arms of the Kingdom of East Anglia. "That's right, sir," he said. "And you know the meaning of them 3 crowns that's on it? Them's the 3 holy crowns that was buried in the ground near by the coast to keep the Germans from landing. If it hadn't been for one of them holy crowns being there still, them Germans would have landed here time and again, they would, and killed man, woman and child in their beds. And if you don't believe me, you ask the rector. There he comes. You asked him, I says." I looked round, and there was the rector, a nice-looking old man, coming up the path. "What's all this about, John?" "Good day to you, sir." "Oh," said the old man, "it weren't nothing, only I was telling this gentleman he ought to ask you about them holy crowns." "Ah, yes, to be sure," said the rector. "But I don't know whether the gentleman is interested in our old stories, eh?" "Oh, he'll be interested fast enough," says the old man. "He'll put his confidence in what you tells him, sir. Why, you known William Hager yourself, father and son too." And before many minutes I was walking up the village street with the rector. He was very willing to talk. There has always been a belief in these parts in the 3 holy crowns. The old people say they were buried in different places near the coast to keep off the Danes or the French or the Germans. And they say that one of the 3 was dug up a long time ago, and another has disappeared by the encroaching of the sea, and one still left doing its work, keeping off invaders. Well, now, you will remember perhaps that in 1687 a crown, which was said to be the crown of Redwald, King of the East Angles, was dug up at Rendlesham, and alas, alas, melted down before it was even properly drawn. Then, on the south, there was a Saxon royal palace, which is now under the sea, eh? Well, there was the 2nd crown, I take it. And up beyond these 2, they say, lies the 3rd. What did the old man mean when he said you knew William Hager, as if that had something to do with the crowns? I said. Oh, to be sure. These Hagers say, or said, that their branch of the family were the guardians of the last crown, A certain old Nathaniel Ager was the first one I knew, and he, I believe, camped out at the place during the whole of the War of 1870. William, his son, did the same during the South African War. And young William, his son, who has only died fairly recently, took lodgings at the cottage nearest the spot. It was a dreadful grief to him to think that he was the last, but he could do nothing. So, the last of the Holy Crowns, if it's there, has no guardian now. You can fancy how interesting I found it. The only thing I could think of when I left him was how to hit upon the spot where the crown was supposed to be. I wish I'd left it alone. But there was a sort of fate in it. For as I bicycled back past the churchyard wall, my eye caught a fairly new gravestone, and on it was the name of William Ager. There it was, you see. A little judicious questioning in the right place, and I should at least find the cottage nearest the spot. Again, there was fate. It took me to the curiosity shop down that way, you know, and I turned over some old books, and if you please, one was a prayer book of 1740, in which was, in a straggly hand, "Nathaniel Ager is my name, and England is my nation. Sebra is my dwelling place, and Christ is my salvation. When I am dead and in my grave, and all my bones are rotten, I hope the Lord will think on me when I am quite forgotten." This poem was dated 1754, and there were many more entries of Agers, Nathaniel, Frederick, William, and so on, ending with William. Of course, I asked the shopman about William Ager, and he happened to remember that he lodged in a cottage in the North Field and died there. I knew which the cottage must be. There is only one sizable one about there. The next thing was to scrape some sort of acquaintance with the people, and I had only to bring up Ager's name when one woman said how sad it was him dying so young, and she was sure it came of him spending the night out of doors in the cold weather. Then I had to say, did he go out on the sea at night? And she said, oh no, it was on the hillock yonder with the trees on it. And there I was. I know something about digging in these barrows, but had to prospect very carefully here. With those old firs growing there, I knew there would be awkward tree roots. I won't bore you with the details. But I got the crown. Well, naturally, we both broke out into exclamations of surprise. No one has ever seen an Anglo-Saxon crown. At least no one had. But our man gazed at us with a rueful eye. Yes, he said, and the worst of it is, I don't know how to put it back. Put it back? We cried out. Why, my dear sir, you've made one of the most exciting finds ever heard of in this country. All he did was to put his face in his hands and mutter, I don't know how to put it back. I have it here in my room. You can come and look at it if you like. I won't offer to bring it here. Well, we were not likely to let the chance slip. Our visitor, his name was Paxton, was in a worse state of shivers than before, and went hurriedly into his room and beckoned us after him. Then he produced a bundle of clean pocket handkerchiefs in which something was wrapped. It was of silver, set with some gems, mostly antique intaglios and cameos. Of course I wanted to turn it over in my hands, but Paxton prevented me. Don't you touch it, he said. Well, Long thought it right to be obtuse, and said, Why not find out who the owner of the land is and inform— Oh, no, no. Paxton broke in impatiently. Don't you see it's got to go back? And I daren't be there at night, and daytime's impossible. Perhaps, though, you don't see. Well, then, the truth is that I've never been alone since I touched it. Then it all came out. It began when I was first prospecting for the crown. There was always somebody, a man, standing by one of the firs. This was in daylight, you know, I always saw him with the tail of my eye, and he was never there when I looked straight for him. Well then, when I was making the tunnel, of course it was worse. It was like someone scraping at my back all the time. I thought for a long time it was only soil dropping on me, but as I got nearer the crown, it was unmistakable. And when I actually got my fingers into the ring of it and pulled it out, there came a sort of cry behind me. Oh, I can't tell you how desolate it was. And horribly threatening, too. And if I hadn't been the wretched fool I am, I should have put the thing back and left it. But I didn't. All the while he was there, trying to thwart me. Sometimes, you see him, and sometimes you don't. He's there, but he has some power over your eyes. Well, I wasn't off the spot very long before sunrise, and then I had to get to the junction for Seaborough and take a train back. There were always hedges or gorse bushes along the road, and I was never easy for a second. And then when I began to meet people going to work, they always looked behind me very strangely. Oh, you may be very sure it isn't my fancy. And even if I do get it put back, he won't forgive me. I can tell that. He dropped into a chair, and I believe he began to cry. Oh, we didn't know what to say. But we felt we must come to the rescue somehow, and so, it really seemed the only thing, we said if he was so set on putting the crown back in its place, we would help him. Our offer was very welcome to Paxton anyhow. It was nearing 10:30. We looked out of the window. There was a brilliant full moon, the Paschal moon. So we were off on this strange errand before we had time to think how very much out of the way it was. Seaborough out of the season is an early, quiet place. But under observation we felt we were, as I have never felt it at another time. Specially was it so when we passed out of the churchyard into a narrow path with close high hedges, through which we hurried as Christian did through that valley, and so got out into open fields, and up onto the ridge, which ended in that mound. As we neared it, Henry Long felt, and I felt too, that there were what I can only call dim presences waiting for us. Of Paxton's agitation all this time I can give you no adequate picture. He breathed like a hunted beast, and we could not either of us look at his face. I never saw anything like the dash with which he flung himself at a particular spot in the side of the mound and tore at it, so that in a very few minutes the greater part of his body was out of sight. We stood holding that bundle and looking very fearfully about us. There was nothing to be seen. A line of dark firs behind us made one skyline, more trees and the church tower on the right, cottages and a windmill on the horizon on the left, calm sea dead in front, the eternal whisper of the Scotch firs just above us and of the sea in front. Yet in all this quiet, an acute and accurate consciousness of a restrained hostility very near us, like a dog on a leash that might be let go at any moment. Paxton pulled himself out of the hole. "Give it to me," he whispered. "Unwrapped." The moonlight just fell on it as he snatched it. We had not ourselves touched that bit of metal, and I have thought since that it was just as well. In another moment Paxton was out of the hole again and busy shoveling back the soil with hands that were already bleeding. It was well before 12 when we got in, trying to put a good face on it and saying, Long and I, what a lovely night it was for a walk. The Boots was on the lookout for us, and we made remarks like that for his edification as we entered the hotel. He gave another look up and down the seafront and said, "You didn't meet many people about, I suppose, sir?" "No, indeed, not a soul," I said, at which I remember Paxton looked oddly at me. "Only I thought I see someone turn up the station road after you gentlemen. Still, you was three together, and I don't suppose he meant mischief." Back in our room, we did our very best to make Paxton take a cheerful view. "There's the crown safe back. Besides, don't you feel better yourself?" "I don't mind confessing," I said, "that on the way there I was very much inclined to take your view about it. Well, about being followed. But going back, it wasn't at all the same thing, was it?" "No, it wouldn't do." "You've nothing to trouble yourselves about," he said. "But I'm not forgiven. I've got to pay for that miserable sacrilege still. But—" And then he stopped. We didn't see what we could do better than sleep on it, or not sleep very much, as was my case, and see what we felt like tomorrow morning. We felt very different, Long and I, on as beautiful an April morning as you could desire, and Paxton also looked very different when we saw him at breakfast. "The first approach to a decent night I seem ever to have had," was what he said. He was going to stay in and come out with us later. We went to the Links, had lunch there rather early so as not to be late back. All the same, the snares of death overtook him. When we went up to our room, Paxton was there, reading quite peaceably. "Ready to come out shortly?" said Long. "Certainly," he said, and I said we would change first. We came out of our rooms at the same time and went together to the sitting room. Paxton wasn't there, only his book. We shouted for him. A servant came out and said, "Why, I thought you gentlemen was gone out already. And so did the other gentleman. He heard you a-calling from the path there and run out in a hurry. He run off down the beach that way." Without a word, we ran that way too. Long said he saw Paxton some distance ahead, running. I couldn't be sure, but one of these sea mists was coming up very quickly from the south, and there were tracks on the sand, as of someone running who wore shoes, and there were other tracks made before those, for the shoes sometimes trod in them and interfered with them, of someone not in shoes, the track of a bare foot, and one that showed more bones than flesh. The notion of Paxton running after anything like this, and supposing it to be the friends he was looking for, was very dreadful to us. And as I ran on, wondering how the poor wretch could have been lured into mistaking that other thing for us, I remembered his saying, "He has some power over your eyes." And I wondered what the end would be, for I had no hope now that the end could be averted. We were now past the houses and had reached that gap there is between them and the old Martello Tower. When you are past the tower, you know, there is nothing but shingle for a long way, not a house, not a human creature. But just before that is the old battery, close to the sea. Well, when we got there, we clambered to the top to take breath and look over the shingle, when we heard what I can only call a laugh, a breathless, a lungless laugh. It came from below and swerved away into the mist. That was enough. We bent over the wall. Paxton was there, at the bottom. He must have dashed straight into the open arms of someone who was waiting there. His mouth was full of sand and stones, and his teeth and jaws were broken to bits. I only glanced once at his face. What were we to say at the inquest? It was a duty, we felt, not to give up the secret of the crown. But what we did agree upon was this: to say that we had only made acquaintance with Paxton the day before, and that he was under some apprehension of danger at the hands of a man called William Ager. Also that we had seen some other tracks besides Paxton's along the beach. But of course by that time everything was gone from the sands. No one had any knowledge, fortunately, of any William Agar living in the district. All that could be done was to return a verdict of willful murder by some person or persons unknown.